Introduction. The people around you shape your future more than you may realize. The Bible teaches in 1 Corinthians 10:33 that bad company corrupts good character, and in Proverbs 13:20 it says he who walks with the wise becomes wise while a companion of fools suffers harm. This story reveals how one young man discovered that his destiny was directly connected to his circle of friends and how a single decision changed the entire direction of his life. It shows how influence slowly shapes thinking, habits and choices over time, even when a person does not notice it at first, and it also shows how God can redirect a life when someone chooses a better environment. Daniel was a young man with big dreams and a desire to build a better future for himself and his family. He lived in a small town where most people did not think beyond the present moment and spent their days without clear direction or purpose. He had a group of friends who were kind but had no ambition or vision for growth, and they often spent their time doing things that did not lead anywhere. Daniel often felt a quiet voice inside him telling him he was meant for more, but he ignored it because he wanted to fit in with his circle. Over time he began to notice that his motivation was slipping and his dreams were getting smaller instead of bigger, and he could not understand why his life felt stuck even though he had potential. Every morning Daniel would wake up with thoughts of success and change, but by the end of the day he found himself back in the same routine with the same people and the same conversations. His friends never talked about goals, education or future plans, and instead they focused on temporary entertainment and passing time without purpose. Daniel slowly began to adopt the same mindset without even realizing it, because the people around him were shaping his thinking more than his own intentions. His productivity started to decline and he began to delay important decisions that could have changed his life. His dreams of studying and building a career started to feel far away and unreachable, and he began to accept a life that was smaller than what he was created for. Daniel's mother often spoke words of wisdom into his life and reminded him of scripture such as Proverbs 23:7, which says, "As a man thinks in his heart, so is he." But Daniel did not fully understand the depth of her words at that time. She tried to encourage him to choose friends who would push him forward instead of holding him back, but he believed that loyalty to his friends was more important than his personal growth. One day while sitting quietly he remembered her words and began to reflect on how his thoughts and environment were connected. He realized that his inner world was slowly becoming a reflection of his outer circle, and this troubled him deeply because he saw that he was not moving forward in life. One afternoon Daniel went to a small shop in town where he met an older man who noticed the frustration on his face. The man asked him about his life, his dreams and what he truly wanted to become. Daniel was surprised by the questions because no one had asked him that before. The man listened carefully and then shared wisdom about life and purpose. He told Daniel that 1 Corinthians 15:33 teaches that evil company corrupts good habits, and explained that the people you spend time with can either build your future or break it without you even noticing at first. These words stayed in Daniel's heart long after the conversation ended, and he began to question his entire environment. As days passed, Daniel started observing his friends more closely, and he noticed that whenever he talked about improvement or change, they would laugh or change the subject. They never encouraged growth and often pulled him back into comfort and laziness instead of progress. He realized that every time he tried to take a step forward, he was being pulled 2 steps back by his environment. This realization made him feel conflicted because he cared about his friends, but he also felt that his future was being delayed. He began to understand that love without direction can still lead a person away from their purpose, and that comfort can become a trap if it keeps a person from growth. One night Daniel sat alone and reflected deeply on his life and the direction he was heading. He felt a strong sense of emptiness because he realized that time was passing and nothing was changing around him. He remembered the promise in Jeremiah 29:11 that God has plans to give hope and a future, and this gave him a small spark of courage to think differently about his life. He began to ask himself hard questions about his choices and the people he was closely connected to, and he understood that something needed to change if he wanted a different future. This moment became a turning point in his heart even though no one else around him knew it. The next day Daniel made a difficult decision to slowly distance himself from his old circle. Even though it was painful and emotionally heavy at first, he started spending less time in places that did not help his growth and began focusing more on his personal development and goals. The silence that came with this decision felt uncomfortable at first because he was used to constant noise and distraction, but over time that silence became space for clarity and reflection. He started reading more, thinking more, and planning his future more seriously than before, and he began to feel a new sense of direction in his life. Soon Daniel met new people who were focused on growth, discipline, education, and faith. These individuals spoke differently. They talked about goals, planning, hard work, and long-term success instead of temporary enjoyment. They encouraged him to believe in himself and to take his life seriously in a way he had never experienced before. Daniel felt inspired by their energy and began to realize that the right circle does not drain you but builds you. He started to feel his motivation return as he spent more time around people who challenged him to grow. Daniel began to study the scriptures more deeply and found guidance in Proverbs 1:5, which says that the wise will increase learning and the person of understanding will gain wise counsel. He applied this to his life by seeking knowledge and learning from those who were ahead of him. He started waking up earlier than before and replaced wasted time with productive habits that helped him grow. Slowly but steadily his confidence began to return and his mindset shifted from limitation to possibility. A mentor in his new circle took time to guide him and help him set clear goals for his future. He taught Daniel that success does not come from motivation alone but from consistent discipline and daily action. This changed the way Daniel viewed his life because he realized that small daily choices were building his future whether he noticed it or not. He began to understand that direction matters more than speed and that the people you walk with determine the strength of your journey. Daniel also began to notice that his old friends still lived in the same patterns and habits that he had left behind. When they saw his change, they tried to pull him back into old conversations and old routines, but he now had a different mindset. He remembered Psalm 1:1, which warns against walking in the path of the wicked, and he used this wisdom to stay focused on his new direction even when it felt difficult or lonely at times. He understood that growth sometimes requires separation from what is familiar. As months passed, Daniel began to see real transformation in his life. His studies improved, his confidence increased, and his vision for the future became clearer than ever before. He was no longer living without purpose but was actively building a life with direction and meaning. The people around him continued to encourage him and hold him accountable, which helped him stay consistent even during difficult days. He realized that the right circle does not just inspire you but sustains you through your weak moments. Daniel eventually became a living example of change to the people who once knew him. He was no longer the same person who followed without thinking, but now he led his life with purpose, discipline, and faith. His transformation showed that when you change your circle, you change your future because your environment shapes your decisions more than you realize. He began to help others who were struggling in the same way he once did by sharing his story and encouraging them to make better choices. Conclusion: your circle will always influence your future more than you think because the people you spend time with shape your thoughts, habits, and decisions over time. The Bible makes it clear that wise company leads to wisdom while poor company leads to struggle. Daniel's story shows that even when a person feels stuck, change is possible through a shift in environment and mindset. When you choose people who build you, encourage you, and align with God's wisdom, your life naturally begins to move in a better direction. But when you stay in a circle that lacks purpose, growth becomes limited and your future becomes smaller than it was meant to be.